Welcome. Today we're going to be talking about why every brand needs a podcast.
Yeah.
And if you want to be the authority in your sphere, in your arena, you need a podcast because it builds trust, it grows your audience, and it generates leads that are on autopilot. And so in 2025, podcasting is just not a marketing trend. It's your new marketing engine.
Yeah.
And it builds trust. It delivers content across all the platforms and positions you as the authority, as the expert in your industry. So if you're still chasing social media trends and struggling with inconsistent content, this episode is going to help you today, and so you can establish your voice and be the expert in your industry. The brands that do this develop trust in 2025. It's all about trust. We've been talking about that in some of our previous episodes, and it builds that trust so you can scale, and podcasting is a great tool. We're going to jump into it. If you're interested in knowing more about a podcast, put the word pod in the chat right now.
Love that. Exactly. The reason podcasts work so well is not just the format. It's really the trust that you're building, the connection. You're in people's ears. They hear your voice. They understand. And what they do is you're building relationship long before people ever even buy. You know, we've helped so many businesses go from invisible experts, they're still experts, but they're invisible, to the go-to voice in their industry. And they do this by having actual valuable driven podcast content. You know, I'll never forget that one client. I think he was the real estate advisor, right? He started doing the weekly local podcast in the area, and he just started sharing homeowner tips and really leaned into it. And within 90 days, this is a huge turnaround. Referrals come in, media features, and even closed 2 listings. I mean, that's huge. Yeah, the authority of a podcast. We had another boutique designer that they launched a podcast, and they would share case studies, philosophy on design, and same thing, what happened with them. They ended up getting featured in a local lifestyle magazine, a great outlet to be featured in. So who here listens to podcasts regularly? Maybe it's the Business Growth Lab. I want you right now to drop in the chat your favorite podcast, and it can be ours.
Yes, that would be good. So welcome to the Business Growth Lab, where we break down everything from branding, marketing, what actually works, so you don't have to be frustrated in 25. You can actually start making some progress with your business and not get lost in the past. So today's episode is for service-based businesses, consultants, coaches, agencies, pretty much any business helping people. A podcast is really going to help you reach those people. It's going to build that community. It's going to create an audience. It's going to create raving fans. And it's going to give you content you can use all across your social media platforms. You guys excited?
So excited.
It's going to be good.
It's gonna be good.
Before we jump in.
Don't take my line. Before we jump in, Derek's just hit that subscribe button. Jump on the subscribe button, guys.
Not jump on it. Hit it.
Hit it. Jump it. You know what I'm saying. Just make sure you press it. Okay. Share it with a friend. Send it to a business owner, because this is going to be a bomb. All right, now let's get in there, Derek.
There we go. Come on, the coffee is kicking in.
Truly.
We are ready to go. Let's talk about why podcasting is the ultimate authority platform. And I think, you know, as the industries change, we want to be on the cutting edge of what's happening, of what's working. And not just keep doing the same things. Trends change. We need to be true to our brand, but you know, moving into what is going to give us traction in 2025. So let's talk about the problems that people face many times in podcasts. We were telling, you know, before the episode, tell us about the audio podcast that you listened to, Lace. That was hilarious.
So yesterday I was just actually listening to an audio podcast on a dentist. I won't say which one. And I was like, oh, this seems intriguing. So I gave it a gander and I was listening to it, and it was so bad. The problem of what he was doing, you could tell he was on the back end just reading a piece of paper. It was like this. In this episode, we are going to talk about why. And I was like, oh no, this is like literally pulling teeth for a dentist. But it's so important that if we're going to have a podcast, we do it well. And we don't want to have shallow engagement while we're doing it either.
Pulling teeth.
Yeah.
Pulling teeth. That was a
Did
one-liner.
That was very funny.
That was spontaneous.
Yeah.
I love it. So we talk about shallow engagement. We've got to understand that social media algorithms, what do? They push the short-term content that doesn't build deep relationships. And so we don't want to just be pushing content out there. Again, we want to be the expert. We want to be the one that as we come across, and we don't like to call ourselves experts, but what are we saying? The authority in our industry. And so we've got to be adding value. You know, there's a lot of content out there that's entertainment, trying to be creative, but I think in this day and age, you know, you can't just do that. Let's be creative, but you've got to add value. You've got to come across as an authority. And so people are coming in because they're getting something away from this. I love, you know, when we do Think Like a CEO, and even, you know, for this podcast, we get people that are DMing us. We get people saying, hey, that really helped me, that episode. And so that's encouraging because we're adding value to people rather than just putting something out there for the sake of doing it.
Right,
yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely. You need connection. I mean, short form, you know, you said it, content can give you some attention, but really it's going to be the long form content that's going to earn you the trust. And I like to think of it this way, you know, I'm married, so I don't want just small compliments here and there. Like I want a deep relationship, you know, with my husband, meaningful conversations. And that's what that long form content really gives you. It gives you what? The relationship. You know, I like to say this, algorithm loves the reels, but people really like the real connection. So making sure that in our long form content that we're giving them that connection that they're desiring.
Yeah. I was listening to Daniel Priestley. He's a business consultant, and he was talking about a study that was recently done of people. And in order for people to really feel like they're connecting with you, they need 11 interactions, 7 high-value interactions, and then 4 hours basically being with you. And he's like, so that's the hurdle that most small businesses are trying to overcome. It's how do you create 4 hours of content that people would want to enjoy? Podcasts is really one of the ways you could do that, because it's not so difficult. You can keep it conversational. People can get to know you. They get to know you as a person, being real, like what you're saying, Lace, but then also you can establish expertise. So podcasts really are a great first starter of getting into that 4 hours of content people can consume, react, and then it gives you that 11 interactions. You can create those reels, as you're saying, create 11 of those, and people will see you over time. Yeah. So, yeah, it's an amazing tool.
Yeah, and I think, you know, it used to be everything's about short content, short to the point. We talk about people's attention spans, but actually when you study, it's not that people don't have an attention span. It's that they don't have patience for something when there's no value.
Yeah, that's it.
And so right now, the long form podcasts, you know, and what we're doing, not that we need to be long winded and, you know, but we need to be interesting and also going deeper in the subject. People enjoy that. They listen to it. You know, I always say when I first started doing podcasts, I wasn't really, you know, for it. I'm like, are people going to just listen to us talk for 2 hours? Like, are you kidding me? And, you know, but that's what's in it. When you have something to say, people will do it, and people like to multitask. I mean, we're working, and I know same depends on what I'm doing, you know. But I like to have stuff on, whether it's music or listening to something, so you can multitask. And people are doing that multitasking while they're at work. Maybe you're at work right now and you're watching us. Great, share this with somebody so they can, you know, do it. But we're multitasking, and we're able to learn while we're working, while we're doing other things. So that's the culture that's there. But again, you got to have something to say. Yeah. You know, some you hear some podcasts and all they are is just rambling and talking nonsense. And after, you know, 5 minutes, what are we even talking about? You know. Yeah. And so if you're just tuning in right now, we're talking about podcasts. All right. And so why podcasting is the ultimate platform.
That's hilarious. Yeah, I think the other thing it gives, because a lot of small business owners, even medium-sized business owners, are like, why would someone want to follow me beyond, you know, just buying my product or service? And I think podcasting really gives you that reason. You know what I mean? It gives them a place of interaction, a long-form engagement with you. Yeah. So that way that, you know, you have an outlet, I would say. And I think creating these spaces of connection is probably more important even than just having a decent website or whatever. These things are people will see your website once, but they'll watch your podcast every week. You know? So I think you have to create these spaces. Podcasts give you that. Yeah.
And I think it's, you know, about building trust.
Yeah,
you mentioned that. You know, if people want to buy from you, they want to transact with you, whether it's your service or your product, they've got to trust you.
Yep, it's true.
And there's a great trust deficit, you know, because we've had phenomenal marketing. And, you know, as I coach people in business, you know, we tell them you can have a you need to focus on your offer. Have a good offer. Have a good product.
Yeah.
But if you have a bad product, you can have good marketing. You're still going to make money. But in the long term, you're going to lose trust. Why?
Yeah.
Because your marketing is great. You're able to sell. But then when people get the product, they're not satisfied. Your services are substandard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think we've all bought bad purchases.
Yeah.
Yes.
We've all experienced in that. And in the consumer industry, people don't believe the marketing anymore.
It's true. Yeah, I was listening. We were talking about this yesterday.
I was
We
just
did a LinkedIn live, and
I wasn't even there, but
I
hey,
know.
I was
yeah,
there.
you gotta go watch it.
Yeah.
It's really interesting because we were talking about this, that trust is really the deficiency with businesses that they're having, because scam artists are just getting better every year. You know, now with AI, it's looking more believable. So people's trust factor is not there.
Yeah.
You know, but this Simon Sinek, that really amazing author and speaker, he was studying the Marines because they're one of the highest, performing, basically a business in the world. You know, their teams are incredible. And so what they were looking at is like those L brackets you used to do when you were in, I think, science or maths, right?
Yeah.
So you look on the left here, it's an L graph. So this is how they would hire somebody and know if they're trustworthy. Okay, so they look at on the top left here, they have performance. Okay, and so that's the left side. And then on the bottom, they have trust. So they have this saying, he's like, I may trust you on the battlefield, but do I trust you with my wife and my money? And that's the thing that they, so
Different
what
arenas.
they will never hire is someone who is high performance and low trust. They that is the worst person, because even though they may be able to do it really well, no one will trust them.
Yep.
And he's like, but what they're really looking for is someone who is high trust and even medium and low performance, because they can always grow in performance, but you can trust them. And I think that's really a very good demonstration of people today.
Yeah.
We're much more likely to buy if we can tell, okay, this is legitimate, I trust these people. I was talking to someone yesterday, and they were telling me this terrible experience they'd had with marketing. They were like, just having people just bombard them and trying to sell them, and they can't tell if it's a scam artist. And so, I was talking, this person was being vulnerable. I'm like, man, I'm really sorry you've had this experience. And I was thinking, well, I wonder why they had this. And because most people, when they're marketing their business, are not creating trust. They're trying to do a one-time hit. They come in.
It's just a pitch.
They come in and pitch. And if it's not an immediate result, they leave. So, but there's a massive space for real businesses to create trust. Trust is built over time.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. That's so funny. I was gonna say trust is literally built over time. And what really is trust? You know, I like to define it as being true to your word, especially when people aren't watching and or know what's going on behind the scenes. And we're not against short form content at all.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
the great thing about long form content is it gives you that time to be able to establish and develop that connection and that deepening of trust altogether.
Yeah.
So
It gives you that ability to show your values, rather than just because people like to put their values on their website.
Yeah,
And I
true.
think that really is very, anyone can tell me that they're trustworthy.
Yeah.
I don't believe you until I see it,
Yeah.
but I think on a podcast, people can see if you're genuine, people can see if you're real, and if you come across trustworthy, So I think that you can really express your business through your podcast.
And I think, trust is you're building the rapport with someone.
Yeah,
And if you're just
absolutely.
tuning in, we're talking about why podcasting is the ultimate authority platform. The chat is open. We are live right now. So if you have any questions, comments, feel free to put them into the chat.
Yes, we love hearing from you.
When we talk about that trust deficit, it's because people are overselling. And of course we want to.
So true.
Why do we sell? Selling is serving. We always say that.
Yeah.
But we want to help people at a higher level.
Yeah.
But we've got to first add value to them, because as you're adding value to them, they're going to trust you to go to the next level. And I love, and we've all had this happen when we talk to a client and they repeat what we said on the podcast. They
funny.
repeat something that they heard us. Yeah, I was watching that and I heard that.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah,
like, now it's
exactly.
so much easier to lead. It's so much easier to
absolutely.
help and advise, because we built that trust, and we're not having to convince them. I remember when I first sat down with Lace when she was just doing her first brand consultancy with the person, and the person, when we sat down, he's like, this is a lot of money, like I really don't know, what are you really gonna give me? And Lace was like, oh, and I just smiled and I said, look, and I went in with confidence, and so but we had to build that trust, and then we ended up, this client, we've done repeat business with them, but I think at that time we didn't have our podcast yet. We were starting out and things like that. But now because of that, it's much easier.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, so much of the time, we'll just use sending the podcast to people to just break the ice with people.
Yeah, that's true.
Rather than you trying to create even a conversation or start something, you can share a podcast and send it to someone like, hey, I thought of you. So what the kind of business that you're doing, and I just did this episode on this podcast. I think it's probably relevant to you. And then they go and watch it and they're like, wow, that was really good.
Yeah.
And now the conversation's open.
It's a tool. And I think, I always say this, you have to date before you get married.
It's so true.
Yeah.
The offer, we're exchanging money for services or for a product. Like, people they're a bit hesitant in that. We just met.
Really
like, who are you?
Yeah.
And, how many, even for us, we've engaged companies and services. They promise you the moon or this marketing package. You get this email. Could you take more leads? Are you too busy for more business? Of course, the answer is we're never too busy for more business. But then they don't deliver. And so I think, there is a skepticism out there in the market. Because people have been burned. I mean, we talked to a client and we were like, we wish you had spoken to us because they're spending money
elsewhere on things that are just
radio
garbage.
and other stuff that is just not working for their industry. But someone sold them something that wasn't beneficial for them. And so, again, I call that, content burnout. People have burnout from the oversaturation of content that doesn't add value to them, and you've got to filter through. So let's talk about what happens when you have no long-term impact. We're putting stuff out there.
So I was just thinking. So sales, I think, is definitely affected by your podcast. So the content burnout, I think it's because in a world now, especially with AI, it's becoming easier to make things that is very noisy, very loud. And so people are just kind of bombarded with stuff. So in order for you to stand out, you have to build relationship. Why do people follow an influencer? Because of a relationship, even though they've never met them, but it's a virtual relationship with that person. You like the values, you respect the person, you believe in whatever that they're doing. So if you can do that same thing in a podcast, you don't have that content burnout, because if you can do it weekly, you're going to have the reels and the stuff coming out. So you're going to have that familiarity going out, but it's going to give you more of a long-term thing. So in a world of noise, you can more have a voice.
Yeah. I really want to put it out there because, having a podcast, sometimes people are like, oh, that's just trendy. That's just the thing to do. But really, again, we talked about it really builds the trust. And so it's not just staying on the trend. It's where people can get to know us. And I think sometimes that, when people are posting every single day, they're kind of in like the Hunger Games and famine. Like, oh, I just got to get content out. I just hope that it does really well. But what you're forgetting is that when you do this long form content, like a podcast, what you just said, you can break it up. You can reuse that and establish it, and then that way you're not in this like scattering, hoarding, I got to get all my eggs in a basket type style. And so I think it's really important to understand that you don't want to be bleeding, thinking that, oh, I have to do all this content to where you get to that burnout. But you got to think of it as instead as I'm building something.
For sure.
Yeah,
it's definitely long-term. It's a long-term strategy because there is a lot of podcasts now, so it does take a little while to build something. But if you're a small and a medium-sized business, you don't really need to have 1 million people watching your podcasts. I've seen business owners and they've got like 2,000 and 3,000 people subscribing to their YouTube channel, and like even their views could be 500 to 1,000, and they're getting really good lead flow and deal flow just simply from that. So you can actually be a micro influencer and with your podcast, just kind of starting out first 3 years. And you'll get off the ground. You'll even start having deals come in. So it doesn't have to be so big. It doesn't, I'm sure it will grow there, I think, with time and effort and dedication. But, don't have that mindset that, you have to be Mr. Beast overnight. It really doesn't happen. So.
Yeah, and, you don't have to be speaking to thousands and tens of thousands of people or millions of people. If you have a niche, you're adding value. People are going to come, and then you're going to have natural organic growth. And so I think the podcast is a great anchor. We want to be on all the different platforms. But if you use that as an anchor, you can reproduce your content from your podcast on social media and other things. We talk about reels and all of that. But basically, the go-to, you're leading them back to your podcast, whether it's on YouTube like we're doing right now, or you're on a podcast platform. all of those things. You know, you're basically going to be able to produce something and then reproduce it for other platforms, but your anchor is your podcast.
Yeah, and I think it's like you got to think of it like a company. You know, your company has a headquarters, you know, so your podcast also is the platform of, okay, this is my home base where people can always come back to and see and understand again that depth of your values, of what you're offering.
Yeah, I think, you know, there is this, I don't know, message out there of the, oh, it's too late to jump into podcasts, it's too late to do social media, this kind of stuff. And honestly, I'm really seeing the opposite effect of like people who are launching podcasts right now and doing it at a high level rather than just like what you're talking about, reading from your phone into a mic, I don't know, whatever. But people who are really investing into high quality podcasts are doing incredibly well. There's a company called Flight Studio, which is Stephen Bartlett's. He's built this thing, but it's literally building podcasts for creators to launch businesses. And they're doing it, I mean, at an incredibly high level. He's built this amazing studio and leveraging all this information he's learned from doing his podcast. But it's people are spending millions of dollars now realizing podcast is a way to grow a business like no other. So it's actually the opposite of what you've been hearing probably.
Maybe you're doing a podcast and the quality is not there. You can see in the descriptions, contact us for a business growth health assessment, and one of our brand consultants will help audit your podcast, audit your business, your marketing, what you're doing. You want to do it well. We don't want to be the invisible expert.
No.
We've got something to say. We need to put it on the platform, get it out there, build that trust so that we can move forward. So let's move into some of the solutions. Like we talk about long form trust. Like, of course, people think, oh my gosh, I got to do a podcast for 4 hours. It doesn't have to be one 4-hour podcast. Let's talk about some of the things that we can do and what's working right now as far as long term, that kind of platform.
Yeah, so I think you just touched on it of the quality. So I think the quality is drastically underestimated of what you need to do. So I was just even seeing some business owners this week who have podcasts, but the quality is horrendous. The lighting is terrible, and the sound is, you know, really bad. Yeah. And, you know, so like I don't think doing a low quality podcast will work this year. So I think if you are doing something at a really low standard, you're going to see really low results. So you need to invest in a proper studio setup, in proper equipment,
or an
agency to help you to do it. If you don't want to go through the whole headache of doing that, there's businesses, and Pure Media does that as well. So reach out for the growth call. But businesses that are doing this wrong, you will waste your time because people want the great experience. Yeah. And there's people that are willing to do it. So if you don't do it, business owner, your competition will.
And it's presentation. I mean, you could have something to say. You've got great content, but if the sound is bad,
I don't want to listen to it.
It's dreary. You know, like you said, you sound like you're reading from a piece of paper.
Oh, it was bad.
Yeah, no one's watching that. Like, no one wants to.
We're
laughing at it. We're not
in
watching.
This day and age.
Right,
you know, I think, you know, the unplugged content works in certain arenas, but if you want to be an expert, if you want to come across as an authority, you gotta have a good presentation.
Yeah, I mean, even like I think someone who would be unplugged, but it still looks amazing is Joe Rogan. I mean, his set is okay. You know, his lighting is decent. It's more of an unplugged feel.
But he's got good sound.
But that's
his brand.
Exactly. He's got good sound. You can hear him and you can see him properly. You know what I mean? So you don't have to, I mean, maybe you look at this and it's like, okay, wow, this is high quality. You don't have to be that level, but you do need to have a certain level of professionalism because people nowadays, their expectation is just gone through the roof because of YouTube. And how technology's progressed, we all expect a certain standard now.
It's so funny. I keep thinking, I don't know why, but like there's some movies I won't watch anymore because the quality is just so bad.
It's true. All the storytelling. My God.
Well, the storytelling, some of it's really good, you know, like the classics. Yeah. But like I'm talking about if you really watch some like older films, like even you know, 1990s, 2000, it's just the technology is different. And so it's harder to actually, you know,
it's hard to watch.
Look at and watch.
It's before HD. You know, my kids are the same, and it's a great movie, but they're like, Dad, it looks so old. It's so So, because of it's not at the current standard.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but
true.
also knowing if you think of like a podcast, like a film, we just heard Samuel just telling us that there's a new Harry Potter cast coming out, and we're like, oh, big shoes to fill.
Yeah.
But why do we talk about, film? Because when you sit down and you watch a movie, you really feel immersed in the story.
Right.
You feel like you have an understanding. Well, if you think of a podcast the same way, of taking 60 minutes to talk with somebody, same thing. You're learning the company's story, you're understanding, and you're immersing yourself. And that's so valuable. I mean, how many films really stick with you? But the same thing with podcasts as well. Like I could think back of so many podcasts where I'm like, wow, that was really, pivotal where I was, whether it was in my training, in business, whatever it might be. So definitely not negating that at all.
And start out small. Start out with a 20 to 30 minute podcast. That's a nice sweet spot, and then build up to an hour.
Yeah.
And we go, an hour and a half to 2 hours sometimes, because this is a different kind of a platform.
Yeah.
But just start with, something that's concise, bringing things across. It doesn't have to be overproduced.
Right.
You can build an affordable studio.
Yeah.
Now, and we can help you do that.
Yes.
You can again contact us, but come into that place where you're coming with something talking on a subject and bringing value to people. And they're going to be more interested. They're going to come back. They're going to subscribe.
And let's talk about how we should do it as a routine. Every single Sunday there are certain podcasts that I'm like, oh, it's Sunday at 3 p.m. I can tune in. Ours is Thursday, so having that integration in there of, people go and they go on drives, they have workouts, and they're waiting to hear from those platforms. So be consistent in that as well. That's definitely a solution.
Consistent day, consistent time is important. We do a live podcast, and it's great. Sometimes we have our blunders, but it's real. People like that. And sometimes and I was telling him I did my last Think Like a CEO podcast. It was live, and then I got this scratch in my throat and could not get it out. It was like a frog in my throat at the end, and I had to just end the podcast because it was live. I was like, oh my God, this is terrible. But like people like that too, because it's real, it's genuine. We joke sometimes. We've said silly stuff. It's not overproduced. But I think that authenticity also is important. Consistency and authenticity, in your integration, and just being yourself.
Yeah. And, that's really thoughtful leadership. I was recently listening to someone, and they were saying that so many people will build a persona online, and that actually gets you in a rut, because you got to think of like, oh, what's the lie that I'm trying to build on? Or what is it that, I once said? So really being, true to yourself, being authentic, and people will pick up on that, and they'll end up actually liking you and enjoying you more in that.
And we've all seen, the podcast that they're trying to be someone else. They're trying to be Joe Rogan. They're trying to do, and not that you can't imitate the style, a talk show style, that's generic, but like the whole persona, your fonts, your presentation, everything, you're trying to be somebody else, and it's like people are like, don't be a copy, just be yourself.
Yeah, I think in a world of gurus, like people who are real, it really stands out. I think everyone's trying to be a guru in some area, and I'm all for people of expertise. There are people who are experts in an area. I was walking near our office here. There is this chiropractor, and I walked in. I've seen them before, but I was like, I'll check out what these guys are doing. And the doctor was there, and so he welcomed me and like was talking to me, and he was such an expert. Like I was listening to him, I was thinking, man, he really should have a podcast, because it was so interesting. He was telling me about the spine and how the spine works, and telling him some things I was looking at, and so I think it allows you to leverage expertise. You know what I mean, and be able to create that across most platforms. So rather than you just showing up on, say, just YouTube, you can take your YouTube content or Spotify, whatever it is, and then put it across your Instagram or wherever people are actually showing up for your specific kind of people.
You can do, say, a podcast like this. We could produce an audio podcast. We could take this and transcribe it and do a blog. Reels will be created, to push people to the podcast. So when you have that solid content, you can reproduce it in smaller formats rather than having to try to do something different, produce something different.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. And you're optimizing what you're doing, which is great as well. I didn't mean to interject, but when you're talking about the chiropractor, I kept thinking about, what if he were to start a podcast? Like, look at Dave Ramsey. You know, what did he do? He got on, did a podcast in the financial, industry and giving that. And regardless of how you think about him, he's a household name.
Yeah.
So you never know what kind of level of expertise, that you can put out there and then build upon.
Yeah, I think we were talking about this yesterday on the LinkedIn, but people have underestimated how drastically under innovative. That was quite a sentence. How drastically under innovative.
Did you just invent a word?
Being innovative but uninnovative. You know what I mean? So how innovation is not there in most industries when it comes to content and stuff. Like I was doing a bit of a study this week on service-based businesses and looking at different websites, and all of them look almost identical. They're all basically a business card. And then if they do any sort of content, it all basically is bland and boring. So in a world of bland and boring business card websites and stuff, you really could do some really innovative things here.
Yeah.
So I think
everyone's using the same template.
Everyone's using
That's what I said yesterday.
I know, it's so true. They're all getting from the same place.
Yeah,
We're all typing ChatGPT. I love it when people. I saw this yesterday. I didn't comment, but I was so tempted. I could tell this guy's just using AI, like a replacement of him for all of his LinkedIn stuff.
Oh,
I didn't comment, but I was like, God, it looks terrible.
They had the emoji there, the formatting,
Yeah, and
dear.
there's now the AI of you that looks, but you can just tell this is AI.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, who's watching that? Like, and we, all of us know, this is not real. So,
and why do you need to do that?
Yeah, just be yourself.
Just be yourself. And I think if you're too busy to do, if you want to add value to people and be authentic, it's got to be real.
Yeah, I mean, most of these business owners that have actually done well are genuinely nice people, and they really have a great solution.
Yeah.
So rather than, having to do all this, other stuff, just be yourself.
Yeah.
Show up in a really present way, and then show up in a really modern way. I think that would immediately differentiate you. So I really think there's a massive open market now for innovation with businesses, what they can do, because no one's doing it, and even in the small range, if you think about, instead of competing with, the $1 billion businesses, those are the only ones doing it. But in small and medium-sized businesses, most people are not doing any sort of innovation,
I mean, there's a few people that are doing well. You mentioned Dave Ramsey. I also wrote down Amy Portfield's podcast. She does a great podcast, and she leads directly into her courses.
Yep, that's true.
And so, it's okay then, as you're talking about, to help. How can we come to the next level in serving people?
Yeah.
We offer free things, here, and some of our services that we have too, free, like our free brand consultancy, and we have other things that we'll talk about probably in this episode.
Yeah.
But it's okay to do that, but it's done in a way that is not hard selling. It's in a way to add value. And she converts at a high level to her program, because people are always getting a report, or they like what she has to say.
Very
they're
tasteful.
receiving value, and they're like, wow, I want more of this. And of course, to get that at a higher level, they're willing to pay a premium.
Yeah.
So what's really interesting? YouTubers, they put their own ads in. So someone sponsors them, like this episode sponsored by whatever company, and then they'll put stuff in there. No one complains who follows them that they've put that in there, because they realize this is actually not just helping them, but also supporting the creator.
Exactly.
So drastically, as you build a loyal audience, they want you to do well. They want to support you. They want even you to plug different kinds of advertisement, because they care about you. Because you've built rapport. I'll never forget, I think it was last year, I went to this conference with one of our friends, and he met a YouTuber there, and I had no idea who this guy was, but he lost his mind. Like, he was so excited to meet this YouTuber and was so ecstatic about it, because he just followed him along a podcast journey, along a content journey. So what that does to your audience is, you cannot create that from any advertisement. You can't create raving fans. You have to do it through connection, and podcasts really kind of give you that.
Yeah, and they feel like they know you.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, so many calls. They're like, oh, I watched like your YouTube. Like, how are you today? Talking to me like,
Exactly.
they know me.
Yeah.
But that's so valuable.
Disarming.
Yeah,
Very disarming.
Yeah, absolutely.
The brand story brand, Donald Miller, his podcast,
Yeah.
basically feeds their whole flywheel.
Yep.
Yeah.
Through that. So you look, that's what's working in the industry and adding value to people. So it's so important. So if you want to build trust with your audience, what should you do? Book a strategic growth call with the Pure Media team. We'd love to help you to see how you can turn your voice into a powerful asset to become that expert and that authority in your industry.
Very good. Yeah, maybe we can jump on to kind of some of those benefits of doing the podcast. I mentioned this earlier, but even with a small podcast, you can do incredibly well.
Yeah.
Most podcasts are going to start, you're going to be hitting the 100 to 500 range of people there when you're starting, but you can really build from that. I was mentioned this guy earlier is a real estate guy, and he built his YouTube podcast, just making YouTube content consistently, innovating in a market where no one's doing that. And he started his whole business turned around, and he was able to have really consistent deal flow. But his channel's not like 10,000 people. I think he's got 2,000 people following him now, and he's just been consistent for a few years.
Yeah.
So I think, people underestimate what a small audience does.
Yeah.
I always like to think of this. When you see 100 people viewed this, just imagine 100 people in a room.
Yeah.
That's a lot of people. You know what I mean?
Listening to you.
Listening to you. So, people underestimate when it's like these small audiences, although it's 100, 500, this is not small. Like, you imagine those people in a room that are listening to you consistently. It's a big deal.
Yeah, so even with a small audience, we just had, I think, Plotu, I hope I said that correctly, Plotu Creations come on. Yes, the replay will be on, so you can watch the replay again and find out what you missed. Chats are open if you have any questions. We're talking about how to become authentic through your podcasts and how podcasts help you to be the expert, the authority in your industry, and what are the benefits of it. Even as you start small, and Samuel was talking about that. You could have low visibility, but what is the important thing? Don't be inconsistent. If you keep being consistent, you're going to get traction.
It's true.
You're going to get traction. It's only a matter of time. And how many, we talk to people and hear their stories. Sometimes it was 3 to 4 years.
Yep, it's true.
Before they got traction, and then they went viral, and now, they're known everywhere. And so you just got to keep doing it, keep adding value. After a while, it will scale.
Yeah.
And there's ways you can grow them. Reach out to Pure Media. We have a few different strategies for kind of kicking off a podcast a little bit faster. So there is stuff you can do, but I think starting is the first thing, and don't feel like you have to start alone because it's a big deal. I know, Derek, you're working with a client right now on launching his podcast, so I think it can be a little overwhelming. Like, what do I say? How do I do it? So, don't really feel like you have to do it alone. Just reach out. The team is more than willing to help.
Yeah, and I think, it's getting people, again, we talk about we keep saying authenticity, but go back to, like, what is your value? What's your persona? And that's what people are going to be attracted to. Maybe not everyone's attracted to it, but there are people that are going to be attracted to your uniqueness.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, because when we overthink it, we're trying to copy someone else.
Yeah.
And that's when it's stressful, because we're not being our real self. But if you are doing that and who's the audience that you're speaking to, who's the audience that you're trying to reach, if you do that, you're going to eventually connect with them.
Yeah, and you really need to have a strategy to be very strategic in this. We talk about, even if you do have a small audience, it's okay, to have what we call evergreen content. What does that mean? You're putting things out consistently. You have, I follow this color analysis, and she, had all these videos that I just went back and watched, because why? They forever live on YouTube, on Spotify, on Apple, all of those platforms, and so it's so important to be consistent, continue to post, continue to put that content out there, because even if it starts again small, you never know who eventually is going to find you, and then you can have a whole new following and grow your following from that as well.
So I think the evergreen thing is just for those who are maybe they don't understand this concept. So there's two kinds of platforms. So there is what's more of a viral instantaneous platform. So you'd think of those as like an Instagram or a TikTok, meaning that you're going to post something, people are going to see it for probably a week, and then it's going to die off drastically, and unless it goes viral maybe in 3 months, it's probably gone, and no one's going to really watch it again. YouTube doesn't work like that. So YouTube, like what you're saying, Lace, it provides you to where you can see all the videos and you go back and watch them. So most YouTubers, like even for us, I was looking yesterday, I think this is now our 7th episode of the Business Growth Lab. So well done, team. But our first episode is doing really well. So, but that's because it's an evergreen. So it means that people go back and they'll watch all your first stuff. So people who are tuning into this, go back and watch the stuff we've done before. A little plug there, but that's evergreen. So podcasts give you that. It's a long-term play to grow your audience, and I think these become assets really for your business. And
you're not going to get burnt out by having to create. I mean, it's overwhelming. I got to do Facebook. I got to do Instagram. I got to do TikTok. I got to do YouTube. I got to have a podcast. But if your podcast, like you said, is the evergreen thing, you can use that as your anchor. We taught you. I love that analogy of your home base. And then everything else produced from that, it makes your content creation easy. Plo2 Creation said, I've thought about many times about doing a podcast. Thank you for this session. We're glad you're tuning in. We can help you. You probably missed out, but we do a free business growth assessment. It's there in the descriptions. You can jump on with one of our team, and we can advise you on how to do it, or we can also help you to get your podcast going. I'm sure you got something to say. And then they asked the question, how long do you speak for a potential podcast? A day, a week, 1 day, a week, or more. And so we talked about that a little bit. But starting out with 20 to 30 minutes is a great place to start, but you want it to be consistent. A weekly podcast is great. I think to get traction, we encourage people to do that. But bi-weekly, starting with that if it's too much to do weekly. But again, you want that consistency, as Samuel was saying, because it's evergreen. People jump on this podcast. Maybe this is your first podcast you're watching here on YouTube, but you can go back and watch
the subscribe button.
Hit the subscribe button.
Make sure to like.
Get notified. Come on. And what happens? You're building that following, and then the content is still there that they can go back. Whereas on Instagram, on other platforms, it's gone after a week.
That one and done syndrome.
It's true. Then I think collaboration. It's a really
huge.
cool thing here. So we're about to start having more collaboration with our podcast. Even we're gonna have some guests on in a couple of weeks, which is exciting. So stay tuned. It's gonna be great. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. But what guests do? So I think guests do a few things. One, you can bring on guests that already have an established name. So that allows your podcast to grow, your business to grow. You're getting exposure to a whole nother group of people. So that's kind of one of the things there. The other thing it does is it builds trust. So if another industry professional respects you and is willing to come on your podcast, what it does for people is like, oh, this guy also believes that this guy's a real person and he's trustworthy. So it's there's this concept in I think it's a debate called standing on the shoulders of giants. And so basically, if I'm having an argument with you, Lace, right, and we're talking about something, but if I start bringing in, well, Albert Einstein said, and then this, I am now standing on his shoulders, and then it's leveraging somebody else's authority. So you can use that same plan with your podcast. So bring some giants on. Most people who work in an industry know some very experienced people. I mean, we know a lot of people in this industry, and we bring them in. So standing on the shoulders of giants is a really good concept you can use with podcasting.
Yeah, I would just caution that though, like bring someone in that complements your business, not your competitor. Because you don't want to, do free advertising on that. And I talked about, I think, in an episode on Think Like a CEO, but who can we collaborate with where we have complementary services or experts that are going to add value to us rather than someone who's an agency, like we're an agency that does exactly what we do, that's going to pitch their service on our platform. And so you want to be careful of that, just in cautioning that. But, letting them come in, we're sharing that influence. And that's what collaboration is. It's a partnership where we're lending our influence, they're lending their influence, and we're able to tap into an audience that maybe doesn't know about us.
No, that's so good. I think that, you got to think of somebody that you would co-sign your name next to. So make sure that they're not coming in and they don't annoy you. They're not here to argue with you either, or take your business. I think that's so valuable and so important. So picking also the right people in that collaboration's so true.
Yeah. I think the other thing that you can start to delve into is niching. So we did again. Guys got to go check out that LinkedIn live we did. I've referenced it 3 times now. But niching down is very powerful in a podcast because what it allows you to do is most people are doing general podcasts, right? So they're doing a podcast where it's for, I don't know, say all people who like makeup, right? That kind of thing. But if you could create a podcast for moms for makeup, you know what I mean? Now you've got an even smaller pool of people that have a very specific set of problems. So with your podcast, you could actually begin to niche down and speak very specifically to a certain group of people.
Yeah.
With that group of people, because you know them more, you're able to touch on a lot more of their pain points. You start to get a lot more emotional response from them. They're way likely to become more of a raving fan. They're more likely to buy your product, and they have a bigger tribalism effect of where they feel a greater sense of ownership. So with your podcast, you can start to use the niching down method to basically target a specific group of people in an industry rather than doing something so broad. That would really help as well.
Yeah, and I think, I think of so many people on YouTube as well. They niched down. I keep thinking of like Hope Scope. She started in the, workout arena and really got into leggings and reviewing just leggings. And that's all she did. And eventually she even had her whole set be a wall of leggings that were folded behind her.
Oh my gosh.
And she was like known as like the legging queen, but she really, came in and targeted that group of women in this space. And of course, always from that, you can eventually branch out, which she eventually did.
Right.
But it really does establish like who your tribe is at first.
Yeah, and you can start like a law firm could do like a Q&A to answer legal questions.
That's a great
an
idea.
SEO consultant could talk about search engines and well-titled episodes and what are some keys and things. So it's just adding value. You don't have to give away, your secret sauce and all that. We're not able to do as much as we can on a consultation call with someone, but we can give general advice that's helping them at a certain level. And then if they like what they hear, it's helping, like you said, to help their pain. We all don't like pain. And so you're helping people to overcome their pain points. You're going to get loyal people that are following you because they're like, how this person is adding value. They're helping me. And, and we listen to people too that give us ideas and creativity because sometimes you hit a creative block and you get in that place where you feel a little stuck and like something out of the box, it produces something in you to spark creativity.
Yeah, so I was listening to Daniel Priestley. He said this recently. I thought it was just amazing. And he's like, so in a world of AI now, information will become valueless, but implementation will go through the roof. And he's like, so even with AI now, some of the stuff we're talking about, you could look up and some of the core things, it would probably come up. But the implementation's a different thing. How do you do it? How do you actually create that? So I think in today's world, you can share the information, you can share the solution, and just a hot take here. Most people are pretty lazy. They don't want to try and work it out. You know what I mean? Even to build a podcast, you got to understand cameras, you got to understand lighting, you got to understand live streaming, you got to so many things, scripting. Like there's a lot that goes into it. That's implementation. So you can share whatever business owner you're in. You can share a lot of your stuff and people will want you to do it because they don't want to have to go through all of this stress of learning and becoming the expert.
And, sometimes, it's cheaper to outsource.
Yeah,
because,
so true.
if you're how many hours is it going to take you to do it? What's that loss of revenue for your time? I mean, time is our most valuable asset. But engaging an expert that does it, we talk about AI. AI can give you the macro. It can give you the principle. But it's not going to give you the micro. It's not going to make it specific to your brand. It's not going to give you the expertise and the experience of someone who's doing it practically. And so we need to understand that's never going to replace that human touch of being able to do that. But you can get the macro. You can get some bullet points of understanding. But how does it actually work? You need to be coached. You need to be coached in that. It's like watching a video. You can watch a video on how to play baseball. But until you get out there and get a coach,
so true.
you're going to be, it looks so easy. It's easier, it looks easier than it actually is to do it.
Oh, I'm reminded of COVID when all the salons shut down. And so my husband and we got all the tools we needed to cut his hair.
Derek did too.
I got pretty good.
Yeah, I came over once for a haircut with him.
That is so funny. Well, I did not get very good, but we, it was costly to get all of these items. You have to have you all right over there?
Derek's having a water fight.
My third lip.
But we had to have what is it called? The smock that you put over you. You had to get the actual clippers and the thinning shears and all of this. And in the end, I'm always like, just go get your hair cut. Go to the expert. I don't have to clean up the hair or anything like that. But so making the most out of it, it's so valuable.
Exactly. And you schedule it in, it's done, and so I think that convenience is there, outsourcing, we had agencies helping us. And as we learned to do it, we start our own agency.
Right.
Yeah. That's so true. Always have a coach.
Yeah.
I think
huge.
Don't underestimate how much you need someone helping you and a coach. Someone who's spent, 20 years understanding something. Why would you want to waste 20 years of your life trying to work it out?
The fastest place to get to the destination is through a coach.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to make the same mistakes. We've done a lot of stuff learning how to do it wrong, throwing stuff up to see if it sticks. And we realize it doesn't stick. In marketing, we've wasted tens of thousands of dollars. But we can help people not to make those mistakes and save money and get there faster because we've gone through the process.
Yeah, there's two costs you can pay. There's the cost of knowledge or there's the cost of time. So you can either spend your whole time trying to understand the knowledge and it's going to cost you years to do it, or you can pay someone who has the knowledge and it may cost you a little bit more, but it's going to give you back 20 years of your life or however long it took them to understand that. There's a designer that we work with. He's a very well-known designer in the world today. And when he'll do stuff, what would take me probably 2 hours, on a napkin, he'll do it. And it drives me. I'm like, how does he do that? But on a napkin. But he's 40 years in the business of design. You know what I mean? And so that's not something you can AI.
Right.
That's not something that you can just do. That is an expert. So don't underestimate experts. So if you are wanting to launch a podcast, this is resounding with you, book a strategic growth call. Tell the consultant, I heard the podcast episode, I want to look at that, and they can help set you up with an expert so you don't have to spend your whole next 3 years trying to learn how to do a podcast and reading notes into the website.
There's two ways to learn. I say mistakes and mentors, and I'll always take that mentor route.
Exactly. We also have our brand builders training that's there in the descriptions, which will help also in this on how you can produce content through your brand, niching down to talk to your audience. So that's a free tool that's available.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just going to use one last illustration here with this. Derek was just working with with an organization, and they were doing this. They're trying to sell tickets for this event that they're doing. And they tried the first time by themselves doing it. And the second time they got an expert. They were talking with Derek and the team of how exactly to do it, and the results were literally, I think, double or triple what they were wanting to do by simply getting an expert in. So I think, sometimes we can be frustrated because we're doing the right thing the wrong way. We're doing a podcast and we're doing it with low quality, with bad audio, with no conversational flow, with no equipment.
Or we don't understand the psychology of the offer.
Exactly. We don't understand how to do stuff. So rather than trying to do it the wrong way, save yourself and everybody else the headache of having to watch you learn and talk to somebody, get help. We do it, whatever the business, getting a consultant and getting a coach in to help you will save you years of your life.
Yeah. And I think seeing the value in that,
Absolutely.
In investing and grow in doing that, and then in producing a quality podcast, which is what we're talking about today. So let's we want to add value, we want to help people, but ultimately we need to make money.
Yeah.
We want to monetize.
Sure.
And so let's talk about how to turn our listeners into leads when we're adding value. How do we now bring them to that place where we can monetize our podcast?
Okay, let me tell you this. This is the easy part, okay? Because once you actually have raving fans, they will do stuff. So the hardest thing is getting the raving fans. Once you've got that, which is really the first part of this conversation, this stuff is going to be easy for you.
Yeah.
So what the first step is creating something called a lead magnet. So a lead magnet basically is the understanding of this. Not everybody's ready to buy right now, okay? They're in any given market, 10 to 20% of the people are in a buying state, and then there's another 40 to 60% that are in what's called information gathering mode.
Yeah.
So they're trying to learn about the problem, they're trying to find the right solution, they're trying to connect with the right person. So lead magnets, rather than trying to get people who immediately are ready to buy, it's going to give you all of those other people who, with given the right information, see you as an expert and understand your solution, would buy.
Yeah.
Okay? So lead magnets, that's what they do. What is a lead magnet? Okay, now we explain this part. Lead magnets could be anything from like an ebook. It could be an assessment. Derek mentioned an assessment earlier. It could be a training video, something that adds value to somebody, something that causes them to either grow in knowledge, have some sort of implementation, or have personalized information. So if they take the assessment, which we mentioned earlier, you'd get a full report of your business. You'd get a report of what's going wrong. If you watch Lacey's training video, you would understand, you would grow in information. Then what that's going to give you is the understanding of their information. So their email, I know I'm going for it here, their email, their phone number, their contact information, so you can start nurturing them towards selling.
All right.
So
Brain dump.
So I mean, there's a lot in what you're saying. Let's kind of backtrack a little bit, because of course the goal is creating those lead magnets.
Right.
But what's the problem? Why do people have podcasts and they don't cross over into sales or monetization? You know, a lot of people, what's the point of podcasts? I'm just, talking on there, and it's not going to do anything to bring in business. So let's talk about that strategy and what we need to do. I think one is understanding you need to have a clear ROI.
Yeah.
If your ROI is unclear, you don't understand how to monetize a podcast, and we want to help you do that a little bit today in the time that we have. Then you're not going to be able to do that. So when you talk about your lead magnet, really what we're talking about is you've got to have a clear CTA, a call to action. So let's talk about that. How can we do the call to action? And we've done that here. We add value to people. We have different things that we're doing. But you've got to have clear next steps for your listeners.
All right, I'm getting in here now. I want to just lay a really hard truth bomb. So a lot of people, and you hit on it, think that, when I do a podcast, it's just giving me a stage and a platform, which yes, but you also need to treat it like a storefront. And the worst thing you could do is be like, oh, come, I have something amazing to show you, and it's a completely empty store. No, you want an ROI. You want to be able to have a return. So what? You need to have some kind of product or service that you're offering. And I think the lead magnets that we're really hitting on, even if they're free and complimentary, it's still something that you can pick off the shelf in the store. And so making sure that people can walk away with not just the value of what you said, because they're going to retain 20% of what we say, but an actual actionable step of what they can do next. And so we really need to lead clients through this process and through this journey, so they can have a little nugget in their basket to walk away with.
I love that. And so when you have a storefront, it's not people out in front grabbing people, pulling them into the store. We all hate that,
No.
But what it is, you have a curb reveal.
You've
You've got, you're at things there that makes it enticing for people to come into the store. So I think, that's what your CTA is. It's not a hard sell, but it's a soft sell. To where we are letting people know, hey, if this is impacting you, how can you bring this to the next level? And of course, we do one-on-one consultations with people, but that's a much higher level than group coaching. Depending on the type of website you need and the value that we're going to do, the price is going to be different. And so it depends. There's a premium on the value that's being added, but how can we bring people to the next step? Maybe they're not ready for step 5, but what's the next step that they would need? And then we can have a call to action. Let people know, communicate clearly to them. You have permission, because they're watching you, to tell them, hey, how can we help you and bring you to the next level?
Yeah. And it's not just about downloads. It's also about direction. I don't know why I kept thinking of like when you go into Nordstrom, like there's such an inviting feeling when you go there. Right. And then they also have the cafe, you know, so they make it very easy to stay there all day. Yeah. But they've done an actual thing to where they're directing you. Maybe you're not going to buy the handbag, you know, but you're going to buy lunch. And then you buy a coffee. And then maybe you're going to walk out with shoes. You know, so it's the direction of where you're taking them. So making it very clear.
And I think storytelling is huge.
Oh, that's huge.
You know, where we can come to place, tell the stories of the wins. Tell the story of people who've been helped. Tell your own experiences of how you've been helped. Yeah. And what does that do? That creates that emotional platform. People buy, they transact because of emotion.
It's huge,
They've got to feel safe. And we talked about trust. But then they've also got to see, hey, this can help me in my pain problem.
Right.
Yeah.
This can help me come to the next level. Yeah. And then they're willing to make an investment because emotionally they're attached and they can see the potential in what's being presented.
That's why I recently bought a weighted vest, because I was emotionally drawn in from this girl.
Oh my God.
That was all Adam. That was all Adam, right?
No, but it's true. But it was her whole storytelling. Okay. She was talking about being a mom, postpartum. Her child was 3. And I'm like, oh my gosh, she's pulling me in. And she's like, this is how I dropped 40 pounds. And then she's just walking around the neighborhood with this weighted vest. I cannot tell you how much she converted me and how fast I pressed buy.
Wow.
So it's their power in the storytelling as well, rather than just imagine you have your product or your service and you're saying buy this. Yeah. You know, it's so much more different.
So I think having the podcast from you as the podcaster, understand it has to lead them to something. Yeah. So even in the conversation that you're having, you want it to lead to whatever it is that you're selling. You know? So for example, like with that story there, it's the story of the mom. You know? So it starts to resonate with moms.
They always get me.
You know what I mean? It starts to talk about the toddler. Then you're pulling on heartstrings. Yeah. And then it's leading them to an idea or a dream state, which is, you know, to lose weight or to be, you know, postpartum, whatever. So you have to craft your whatever it is, your podcast, to lead people to something. We call that a funnel. Yeah. You know, so there's the big intake part. Like if you imagine what a funnel looks like, there's the big intake part. That's the podcast, right? Then what's the next part? It's the story. Yeah. What's the story that's drawing them in closer, right? Then what's the next thing? The lead magnet. It's that way they can, get some higher level of value, right? And then what's the final thing? Move towards the sale. So buying something or an upsell or whatever it is. Yeah. So it has to flow, you know? So you got to kind of like visually draw that and map it out. Yeah.
And what you're trying to do. The problem with people try to go right to selling.
Yeah.
And so if you're not immersing them in that funnel, they're not going to be ready.
Because people hate being hard sold.
Exactly. Especially in this day and age, because it's so overdone. Right. But I think, you know, the principles is educate online and sell offline.
So good.
I agree.
Educate online and then sell offline. So once they're in that funnel, you're adding value, you're educating, you're building trust. Then get them on a call. Then you get them into that funnel where they can click on a link eventually and then find out your offer.
It's very good. Yeah, I mean, hard selling has destroyed it for, you know, the sales industry of people trying to sell. But we do need to sell. Selling should be serving people.
Yeah, and I think it's comfortable. Like if we want to help people to get off the fence and make a decision. But if we haven't added the value and basically built that relationship with them or let them see, then what are we doing? It's a manipulation.
It is. Oh, yeah, it really is.
To just because we just want to sell. You know, we call that commission breath. I always tell people when I coach them, don't have commission breath, bad breath. And you know, it's that. Like we always, you know, nothing against car salesmen. We got the guy who sells me my car is great.
Yeah, mine too.
You know, but you've had bad car salesmen. You walk in, you haven't even a chance. Can I help you? Can I? And they're just trying to push you.
Down your neck.
You know, come into my office and they want to lock the door. It'll take 5 minutes and you're there for an hour. And they're just, you know, and I'm like, hey, I'm just like, you know, waiting for my car to get serviced. I just popped into the sales room. Like I'm not in the market for that, you know. And so again.
Yeah, and I think, you know, I think I was showing Lace. There's this amazing lady called Eileen Wilder, and she sells. She sells to stages. So if you think about it, a podcast is a stage, really. Yeah. It's a virtual stage. You may not see the people, but they are there listening to you. You know, and the thing about even when I watch Eileen's stuff, and I've bought now a few things from her, is that you feel like you're sat in a room with Eileen and she's talking to you only. Yeah. She has this ability to just draw you in and connect with your heart, connect with your emotion, and make you feel like she really cares about you.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the experience people want, not in a manipulative way, but in a way that's genuine and people care. And you can do that with a podcast.
And she's a powerful story, you know, and her story, not, you know, that, I mean, her husband was an Uber driver. They're living in a 2-bedroom apartment with 3 kids. And, you know, I may have got a little bit wrong, but, you know, and what happens? She starts getting into coaching and changed her whole family, and now I mean she's one of the queens of coaching, and you know, working with Russell Brunson and you know different ones and on those platforms. But her story is so powerful, and you know, you can tell she's sincere of really wanting to help people to improve their quality of life. And I think, you know, again, that serving is selling. We keep saying that over and over. We said it like 5 times already in this episode, but that's
you should
true.
Write it down. Serving is selling.
When you're there, it's not just about you making money and having another notch in your belt.
Right.
For, you know, we have another offer, we have another sale, or but it's like we're helping people. You know, and that's our heart, to help business people, to fast track them into success and to become a leader in their industry, you know, and offer services that help people and improve life, you know. And I think if you can do that, everyone's looking for someone. You're going to have no problem making money because you're making other people successful.
And one thing I think I love about her story, I may be wrong in this, but I think she started like in her 40s. When she really, and that's like, that's also saying to you, like, it's not too late to start, you know, and I think there's something so powerful in that. And so also sharing your story and doing something about it and not getting stuck. So if you're listening right now and you're like, hey, it's not too late for me, I can identify with this, I want you to look at the description and book a health assessment really for your company. How can you take it to the next level with this health assessment? And we'll get on a call with you and go through you with that to really leave you not stuck in the rut that you are, but to take you where you need to go.
Awesome. You know, and so let's talk about monetizing. Another thing we can do is, of course, when you get to a certain level of success, you're getting views, 200 to 1,000 views. You can also get sponsor packages where sponsors will come on because they want to get in front of your audience. But you need to be careful with that. Again, not people hard selling or something that's not complementary to you. But YouTube is huge right now. Facebook's paying creators to create content just to have creative content that's there. And so, you know, you can monetize from that. It's a great way to do it.
So Lumi, if you're listening, you can sponsor us right now.
That's awesome.
No, but I think it's important to know that that's available out there for you. And even again, like you said, if your count is at 200, that's still enough to get in front of people. And so to really leverage off of that.
It's true. Yeah, I think, you know, as you're moving into the sponsorship model, you know, things to just be aware of would be most sponsors will allow you to do the plug, you know, rather than them sending you something, you know, an ad or something. I think when you're doing it, comes across a lot more genuine if you can be the one, because people have the relationship with you, not with this other company, you know. So I would just try, and if you're going to move in the sponsorship model, allow yourself to be the one doing the pitch or the announcement there. So maybe we could talk about some solutions. How do you actually how do you solve these problems? Does that sound good, Derek?
Yeah, I think, you know,
you wanted to add?
lead magnet is one of them. I think that was the huge one. We kind of jumped into that and kind of backtrack a little bit. Yeah. But creating a lead magnet. So you gave a lot of information on there. What basically simplest, for those who don't understand funnel lead magnet, can you break that down a little bit? What is a tool, or how does it work as a guide for
Cliff
people?
Notes, Samuel.
Yeah, the Cliff Notes. Here we go. Sorry.
When you do this all the time, like, you just threw out like a whole course and like a paragraph there.
So I think if you think of lead magnet simply, it's like that first step of engagement. So it would be, in a simple form, you're getting their information in exchange for some form of value to them. Yeah. So you can determine what the value is. You probably know your audience the best anyway. Yeah. You know their pain, you know their issues, you know their vision and their desire and what they want. So I would craft a lead magnet around that. So just write down maybe those 5 things. Yeah. And then think about what could be the best way to do that.
So basically getting their name, their email, phone number if you can, if not at least email, And how do we do that? Through lead magnet, you could throw out a free ebook or throw back a free. We have our brand consultancy call. We have things that we're offering to people, and you might not be able to do that at that level,
right?
But something of value to them. And what are you doing? You're capturing them. We're not going to spam you,
right?
But now you have that person in your ecosystem,
right?
And you can email them, let them know about your podcast coming again, and different services that you may offer, and they can, have your social media plugs there. What do you do? You're basically getting them immersed in your ecosystem so you can continue to nurture them, add value to them until they're ready to buy from you.
Yeah, and then when you do that, you can create with them a community funnel, so actually have to where there's an ownership because, they connected with you enough to where you got their contact back, and then you can put them in groups, whether that's on Facebook, WhatsApp, email, text, all of those things, and then they can be a part of what's going on and understand and get those updates.
And I would encourage people, don't listen to the news. People say email's dead.
Sorry, SEO, write that down. Email is not dead.
It's not dead. It's not dead. And so I mean, the fact you can get into someone's inbox.
Yeah.
Now, of course, the Gen Z, they don't read emails. You're dealing with different clientele. But for business people, and email is still huge. And so don't listen. A lot of the noise that's out there, we talk about getting rid of the noise. Once you have their email, once you have that direct contact, I mean, if you can get a phone number, now you can text direct.
Yep.
Which I get texts every day. It's become a norm where people are used to it. Now you can basically have direct access to that person and continue to nurture them. So lead magnets, what else can we talk about? Soft selling. Don't hard sell. But we're not saying don't sell. So what's the difference in soft selling and hard selling?
I think soft selling is allowing them to make the decision. I think hard selling is trying to make it for them. So rather than you presenting, the solution, and there's two types of energy in selling. There is push and pull energy. So push energy is high excitement, high impact that. But honestly, the people who are the masters of selling, in the beginning, the conversation is high energy. It's that push energy. But when it comes to the selling, it's what's called pull energy. So you pull all the way back and you allow them to come to you. You kind of withdraw. You allow them to make the decision. You allow them to think, is this the right solution for me? Chris Stowe, who's a master of selling and sells very expensive things, and he talks about he'll try and end the sale during the sale, which is like some high level stuff. But what he'll say is like, well, I don't know, is this the right solution for you? And then that allows them to process, is this the right solution? And then they sell themselves. Yes, it is the right solution. So this is soft selling. It's allowing someone to make the decision.
And I think, it's that reverse psychology of you're nurturing them. You're not pressurizing them, but you're building curiosity.
Oh, that's what I was going to say.
And you're, like you said, when you pull back like that, and I've done that before, I say, well, we know this could really help you at a high level, but, if you're not at a place where you can make that investment, it's not the right time for you. It's okay. This isn't for everyone. And then what do? People immediately are like, well,
I want to
I want this. I want to be a part of that. I want to, and you're not doing it in a manipulative way, but you're like, look, if you're not going to do this, someone else is doing it. And, even for us in our agency, like we limit the number of clients we take on in a month because we want to offer a high value. We don't want to take more than we can handle. And so, we've told people before, like, hey, we can hold your spot, but if you're not willing to move forward, we're going to have to give your spot to someone else. And what do people say? Well, I don't want to lose my spot.
Right.
Don't lose your spot because it's going to put you at the back of the line.
I think in the most simplistic way of putting it is not putting that pressure, and you said, and really building that curiosity and let them, come up with the solution and thinking like, oh, like this is exactly what I need. And when you get them to think it, then again, you're doing this soft selling, but it's something that usually they really do need. And so you're not selling them something that, is off-putting or they don't need or that's not going to help them. So really, taking that pressure off and building that curiosity.
There's, external pressure and there's internal pressure.
And internal's the best.
Because
they're pressurizing themselves to make the decision.
Exactly.
I think when you think of sales, most people think of a car salesman, which what they use is external pressure. It's like, you need to buy right now and like the deal's going and this kind of thing. And like nobody likes that. It's just stresses you out.
This isn't my lane. We got to do an episode on your creating the offer and sales.
Let's do it.
Sales.
That's a great idea.
See if Derek's writing next week's content.
We'll have to bring something like that. What else can we do? I think, another great tool is creating a community platform. Where you have a group, or you have, we bring people in the community, private WhatsApp, where now they're in a community with other people. And what are you going to have? You're going to have past clients there. You're going to have people who are currently in the process, people who are still dating you and not really ready to move forward. And what's going to happen? That peer pressure is a positive thing where like, hey man, take the step. I did this and look what's happened to me. And we've done that. We just talked to someone this week, and Samuel met someone in the jacuzzi at the gym, and they were telling you like, they helped to scale them, to $4 million in their business and what they're doing and all like that. That's the best referral sales that is the best that you could get, more than spending money on marketing, is that somebody told me work for them. They're not employed, they're not going to get anything from it, but like, I've done this and it works. And so that community is powerful. What are some other things that we can do?
The premium service, educate them, the podcast. We've been talking about this throughout, but making sure that we have that platform to where we can reach them.
That's really good. I think creating premium services is a thing. So people always want the nice thing. That's why business class exists on a plane. That's why first class exists, because there is a whole group of people that don't want what everybody can have. They want something that's exclusive. They want this is Derek. I'm just talking about
I'll
Derek,
take business
basically.
class any day. Come on.
So they don't want what's available to everyone. They want a premium experience. So I think you can use your podcast to create this tension. I think tension is what makes everything work. Tension's what makes a guitar string sound nice. So you have to have tension. And how do you do that? So the podcast is available for everybody. The private group is not available for everybody.
Right.
The podcast is available for everybody. The lead magnet's available to those that want to do it. But the service, the premium value that comes after that, is not available for free.
So good,
it's available for a certain level of
investment.
value. Have to make an investment. So you have to, again, it's designing this. Do you have a levels to the game? Do you have a funnel that draws people in? Not everybody wants what's available to everybody.
Exactly. Love it. So if maybe you have a podcast, you're out there and you're wanting to know how to do this, we can help you to do that. We have a great tool called the Business and Marketing Health Assessment. It's going to help you to assess where you're at in your marketing and in your business, and help you to know what conversion ready content you can produce. So that's a free tool that's available to you there in the description. All right, let's move on. Let's kind of recap a little bit. We've got a lot of information here. We've been talking about why podcasting is the ultimate authority platform, and some strategic benefits of doing that. Even just starting with a small audience, you got to start somewhere. And as you're going to keep doing it, keep putting in the reps, and it's going to pay off. And then we talked about how to turn listeners into leads. That's the ultimate goal. Right. We want to add value, but how can we help people at a higher level? It's when they make an investment.
It's so true,
and it's so important. So,
I mean, I was just thinking, what would be some questions that people who are trying to start their podcast might be wondering? I think, what's the first step? So maybe, what would be the first step if I want to launch a podcast that we could do?
Know who your audience is. Who are you wanting to speak to? If you speak to everyone, you're speaking to no one. We said that before. But, and we could use many different examples. Who is this podcast for? It's for business owners, entrepreneurs, medium size, small businesses, or even corporations that need to come back to these basics that are there, and making sure that the fundamentals are there. So we're talking to business people. We're talking business to business. We're talking to entrepreneurs. We're not talking just to, people who are just employees, who aren't in decision making. And this they probably aren't thinking this kind of thing. So, and there's nothing wrong with that. You can have other things. We have our CEO, think like a CEO. And what do? I give principles, I give strategies, I give plays for the decision makers in businesses. And so that's geared towards them. And so, you guys did a LinkedIn live yesterday, which is probably more general business, but around people who are concerned about brands and think that we're talking to a certain people. Business is a huge arena. We can't just do the business podcast. Well, that's like, there's corporate business, there's entrepreneurs, there are people at different levels, you know. So maybe if I was going to start a podcast, you know, how to go from 6 figures to 7 figures.
That's a great
podcast. How to go to 7 to 8 figures. You're dealing with people, and the language, the content's going to be different to people in those arenas.
So you're saying that first step would be basically think about who it's for.
Who's it for? Who's your niche? Who do you want to talk to? And focus on that. Then second step, of course, then what content do they need? What content
strategy,
What's the content that's going to help? So, you know, today we're talking about podcasts. That this is something, if you want to build your brand, it's one of the pieces. And so you can just work out an outline, you know, of what you would want to do your first 6, 12 episodes. You don't have to have it all figured out, but just do your first 2 weeks and then build off of that.
Okay, Lyson, next question. If I already have a podcast, but maybe the quality's not there, and you know stuff that we're talking about on this episode is resonating, what would be some stuff to do?
Yeah, great question. You know, we have the brand audit available in the description, and if you want someone like us, an agency, to come and, you know, give you feedback and our opinion and our expertise, we would be happy to do that for you. But it's important to look at, you know, what are also your comments saying. You know, look at what the audience, are they enjoying this? Are they slow? The view count, the share count, all of that. But it's really important that you put out, again, we talked about is quality. People want things that, you know, are nice to look at and also sound good. So I definitely, we can help you out on that.
I think the word's excellence. You know, you don't have to do things in like, we have a professional studio because we do this for a living, and we have all these sets and stuff. It's part of our business, but you may not have that.
Right.
But start with, you know, quality. You got to have good lighting.
Yes.
You mentioned earlier, good sound. You know, you want to have a good presentation. If not, it's distracting. If the sound is bad, people aren't going to listen to your content because they're like, what is this guy doing? It's like, why is it so dark? Why is the, you know, the sound buzzing? You know, why is there, you know, all this kind of thing? So, doing it at a high level, it doesn't have to be at that professional studio level,
right?
But good lighting, good sound, color, so that, you know, people basically are not going to be distracted by that. They can connect with you.
Yeah, so good.
Because they can see you well, and, you know, see your expression and so forth.
Yeah, I think another question would be, and I'll answer this one, of the what do I do if my podcast is not growing? And so I think, you know, first of all, there's a lot of different things that could affect why a podcast isn't growing. So, you know, jump on a call, book that strategic growth call. You can talk to an expert, but so you could think about it a few things. So one thing would be the content itself. So is the content niche down for the right person? That could be part of it. Second thing's quality. Derek just mentioned that. Is the quality there that people would want to do it? The third thing is, do you have like a growth strategy? So are you bringing on experts? Are you advertising? We have a saying with our team that even though the product's good, if we don't market it, it's not worth making the product. So you have to market the actual podcast itself. So if you've got no marketing for the podcast, then probably why you're not growing. Anything else there?
Get a coach. You know, I think we talked a lot about that. I mean, we've invested tens of thousands of dollars in people who helped us to know how to do offers, help us to learn some of these skills. So when you're going to fast track yourself rather than
trying to work it out,
doing the wrong thing. You can still get there, but it's a lot of time, a lot of effort. Like let's learn from what's working, make it our own. Of course, keep it in our uniqueness, but get a coach, make that investment in it. It's less stress. It's time, you know, as a business person, a lot of stuff we do too, we outsource to the things we don't need in-house.
Right.
Why? So we can focus on what we're good at, which is doing the business and helping people at a higher level, you know, from that. So I would say that's so important to do that, doing that audit, getting that outside view of where we're at to help us to become better.
Yeah. Is there anything else that maybe someone might be wondering, questions? Do you guys want to add on there we could answer?
Yeah, I think lead funnel, you know, that was the other piece. Like if you're not, people say, well, my podcast isn't converting, I'm not monetizing. And that's what we get from people. But again, how can you bring in the soft selling?
Yeah.
And again, you've got to have a clear call to action.
Yeah,
you can't the offer you don't make is the offer people can't take.
Exactly.
And so having that and not being afraid of that,
Right.
because people are like, well, I don't want a hard sell. I'm just adding education. But yet people want to know what the next step is.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, and if I tell some girl, you know, you're dating this guy for 5 years, what's the next step? If he's not thinking of marrying you, you're off the market.
Yeah.
Like, you know, where's this thing going to go? So a little analogy there, but like, hey, people are with you, but like they want to know what's the next steps that they can take to get greater value. And I think in doing that, it's the service we're offering to people, looking at it like that.
Yeah.
We don't have to be a part of the hard sell and all of that, but taking it, giving people that opportunity. And I think that's being kind, is having that clarity.
Yeah.
And if you're wondering, you know, how are these top brands, you know, building this authority, watch my brand builders training video, completely free in the description. It's going to be a tool that will help fast track you there.
Very good. So thank you all for watching today's episode. Again, all those things are in the description, resources for you there that can help you. Tune into the next episode. It's going to be amazing.
More great content coming your way.
More great content coming. Derek's already having ideas for it.
Awesome.
All right. See you soon.
See you guys.